Nope, I'm good. That's it.
You're good? Alright. Story's over. You guys just missed the story. This is I'm a movie club. We watched Odd Thomas this week. I'm Chris.
I'm Derek.
Alright. We have no conflicts with the order people introduced themselves this week because Josh is smoking, Terry's running late, and Richard's question mark. So yeah.
Well,
Derek, initial thoughts. And remember, you have to carry the initial thoughts for like three other people too.
oh wow, is that right?
Yeah.
Um, I felt this movie really tried hard to be Scott Pilgrim, and needed less Scott Pilgrim and more Lovecraft.
Well, I thought this movie was good. So good I didn't even take notes.
Uh, that isn't to say that it wasn't solid. I felt like this was a solid movie. Like if I ever gave a movie a three that deserved it, or 6 out of 10,
Really?
this movie,
Wow.
I feel.
All right, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I was strongly compelled by this movie. Like I kind of see where it never gets that yeah moment. Like you never really celebrate this movie the way you might celebrate even Zombie Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Because Zombie Hunter you're like guns and yeah and blowing shit up, and this
Well,
movie is just like
it
yeah.
kind of has a more consistent hockey stick curve, than Blair Witch. Blair Witch just had like this plateau of just one. At the very end, it's like boom, like it's just one spike, and then the movie's over. This movie kind of had like a very slow climb. At the end, it was bam. Um, and so when you average that out, it gets to be pretty solid. I think this movie did have problems with pacing.
Hmm. I can
Um,
see that. I mean, generally, there was a moment where I'm like, and now the act when he finds the dead body, right? Fungus Joe
yeah,
in his tub. I'm like, yeah, we're kicking it off. It's after midnight. He found the dead
yeah,
body. He's been framed.
yeah.
Shit's gonna okay. All right, I'll wait a little longer. You know, like I was ready for it.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
But again, I was still entertained by the ride.
Yeah, I was. I enjoyed the ride. I just didn't find it very remarkable. It's kind of like, you appreciate a certain amount of skill, but you aren't wowed by it. It's just,
Um,
oh, this is entertaining.
it was a movie we watched a while back where it was just a solid movie, but it wasn't really like amazing. It might have been something closer to Last Stand for you, because maybe that was how you felt about Last Stand. Maybe even Chud.
Um, Chud was inching out of that solid movie to me anyway. I think it probably was more Last Stand. Um, my mind gravitates towards Solomon Kane, but I think the reason why the problems I have with that movie were just the potential it failed to execute on.
Interesting. All right. Because again, I wanted to really pick up. I expected it to really pick up after the tub thing, but then it didn't. It kept being like for a bit.
Yeah,
And I don't hold that against it. Like, but I can see how somebody might. I think it was a good slow boil that paid off at the end, where like you keep
yeah.
thinking things have been addressed, and it's like, oh, and so like it keeps juggling these things right to the end.
I thought the twist of like the plot twist, and when I mean I say that
Which one?
deliberately meaning the the twist in and how the events come to be, was somewhat trite. It was like, oh no, it's not how many you think, it's one more.
I liked it.
It's always one more coming. Like, all right.
It kept getting a little worse and a little worse. I was pretty happy with that.
That's
So
actually typical of the novels. That was one of the reasons I had saw this, and I was like, yeah, we got to watch this because I'm a huge fan of the actual novels, and I think they did a fairly faithful interpretation of the novel into actual movie. It
So you
was
said
good.
this is novel or novels of D&D?
Novels. This is the
Interesting.
first novel in a series. It's actually
Okay.
six books long. They're quick reads. They're actually really good by Dean Koontz. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I was like taking notes, and I wanted to comment on the pacing too, was that at the very beginning of the movie, it seemed hectic, almost breakneck. and then like it kind of slowed down. But I think that the slowing down, like Chris was saying, wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It slowed down to tell the story that it needed to, but they didn't want to. They wanted to do something that you typically don't see in a lot of those movies where they translate them from books. They actually give you tons and tons of backstory, and then drop in the actual story they want to tell with the movie. They gave you a lot of information to try to absorb very quickly, and then just ran along with it.
Yep, that they did.
Could you elaborate more on what you mean by the breakneck speed of the pacing at the beginning? Because I didn't feel that.
Well, I mean, they had the whole thing where it's like he has to fight down Harlow, the guy who killed the little girl. Yep. And in that time period, they're talking about like they're doing this action sequence, and while they're doing the action sequence, there's a voiceover that's just going on and on and on about what Odd has accomplished in his life, who he is, what he does. Then the flashbacks, which were also kind of thrown in at the one flashback I think where they talked, two flashbacks where they talked about his mom, and then they talked about the Bodaks. Those were both like kind of almost like really quick, they didn't spare any time at all with the freaking Bodak thing. I mean, they're like, hey, here's the thing about Bodaks, it's going to be about 10 seconds. Oh, you flipped one off, you're dead, and then he's dead. Like, it didn't even pause to let you catch your breath. It was like, hey, it's done.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second.
It definitely, like, they cram all the rules in there at the beginning. They start you off with a fight scene, which is like de rigueur for movies these days. Shit's got to get fucked up or crashed in or fucking, whatever. In the first 2 minutes, because I guess they're afraid you're gonna fall asleep in the theater, and then they dial it back down, and there's like the entire time, like throughout that fight scene, and then in the first diner scene, they're just giving you rules and how his world works and everything like that. So it is, there's a very well done info dump in the beginning, and that's what the opening sequences are.
I did think the info dump at the beginning was well done. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I thought that was a good bit of pacing, and I only really feel as if the pace was slow looking back. If I'm honest with myself, during the movie, I didn't necessarily feel like the pacing was slow. There were just parts where I'm like kind of bored here, but maybe that was intentional.
Probably not intentional. Not for movies that are desperate to keep your attention. But,
all right, so I have a question about like the dialogue.
Oof.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Josh. What did you think about the dialogue in general? The dialogue in general, or to be more specific, the dialogue between the two main characters, Stormy and Odd.
First of all, having read the books, I kind of thought it was spot on. Like in my mind, I haven't read the books in quite some time, and I actually picked up the audiobook of the first one because it's I haven't listened to. I read that one. I haven't listened to the rest of them in quite some time. Planning on doing it again, but the conversations between them seem spot on for me from what I can remember. Like, that's how the characters are. They're not necessarily... Like, I think that what happened was they had Alison Timlin to play Odd, and she was a lot hotter than I imagined Stormy to be. But I think they did a really good job with the dialogue that was in the book and translating that into something that was actually in the film. And, I mean, I liked it. Just the back-and-forth nature of them going the way they were talking. I thought it was definitely, like, a non-standard romance. The chick was definitely, like, firing back more often than freaking Odd was, And that's kind of typical of how Odd is. Odd is not, a direct, quick-firing person. I mean, they do a good job of, showing him as being a lot more nice, slower-paced person, and he still gets to get some in every once in a while, but it's just not as bad as in the books.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
I think it was a convincing romance overall. I could do less with the weird, lingering camera shots on Stormy, but if anything, the problems with their dialogue is that it had Watchmen syndrome, where it was obviously taken from a written source, and it just did not play well in a movie context.
Interesting. I didn't get the. I don't think I know how to identify the Watchmen syndrome. I mean, obviously, given the name of the syndrome, I could identify it in the Watchmen, but not when I haven't read both the book and have watched the movie. Like if I just watched the movie, not read the book. Is what I mean.
If you watch the movie, there's a bit where Dan and Laurie have lunch, right? Not Alan Silk Spectre too, and he's putting her to the cab, and he's like, she's like, "Oh, hey, I guess no one's been laughing much lately." And he's like, "Yeah, well, the comedian is dead," which is a spot-on line from the fucking comic,
Mhm.
and it's a great line in the comic. It works. It's pat. Like end of that issue. Bam, turn the page. Next issue.
Mhm.
In the movie, it's just a fucking clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Like it's not a delivery thing. It is just the fact that humans cannot express that idea in that space while performing that action. It's like the comic book dialogue thing. So, and that's kind of my go-to example of why The Watchmen fails as direct adaptation. And I kind of got that feeling in some of their conversations too, where they say things and it's like you're getting out the entire line from the book and it doesn't work.
Interesting. I felt as if, and this is obviously from a person that hasn't read the book, but I felt as if there was a lack of chemistry between them. And I definitely got more of a Batman Robin feel when I think they wanted more of a Bonnie and Clyde. Um, I don't know if that translates well as far as the characterization is concerned, but that's kind of where I was.
I didn't so much feel like there was a lack of chemistry. To me, I felt like they had done pretty well with that, but that's me. I mean, just from what I had seen, I thought it was well done. I mean, I thought they had a really good thing back and forth, and then the way that they played it out, like, it just seemed good to me, especially toward the end. You know, I mean, when they do the final twist where it's like, oh, yeah, that was like, I don't know, like that's one of the reasons why I saw this movie up there, and I was like, we have to cover this one, because that was just, I knew it was coming, but like they just played it to where it wasn't there, like it wasn't a big deal, and I'm like, did they change the ending? And then when they reveal it, Haynes and Yeltsin and like Allison are going back and forth, and then freaking even Willem Dafoe, I was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. This is terrible. Like this is rending.
I felt as if the dialogue was well written. Like if I were to read it on a page, I would enjoy it. But it felt forced in the movie, and that maybe kind of touches on something what Chris said. And I was thinking about it, and I look back, and there's one part that I particularly love. It's when he's kind of in this moment of self-doubt, and she says, I can't remember what she tells him, but she mopeds away, and she says, must not look back to give him strength.
Yeah.
And I love it. It was solid. It was a solid moment that justified a lot of their interactions, and I wish it would have happened sooner in the movie.
I liked it. Cause I think it affects things retroactively. I think this movie does that a lot, where it makes you go back and like the one part where there's like, oh wait, he's the guy who was in that thing when I was in the house earlier, and then it actually flashes back and shows him. Like, it's really weird because you guys have been retroactively fixing a lot of things without really showing them to us, but you're going to do this one. It's interesting, but okay. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I like that they did that. I really, really did like that scene. That cemented a lot of things for me.
I might watch this a second time, because that's a good point. Maybe if I watch this a second time, knowing kind of what goes on, it'll make more sense, or it'll have more gel in my mind.
Yeah. I almost fucked myself and Googled POD.
Oh, yeah.
Just watch it, because I was totally in the movie. Richard's going to fuck himself. Well, Richard's not going to watch this movie. But Richard, I know he's not going to watch this either. Richard totally fucking pauses the movie. Watch Chud. He would pause it to write things down, and I just wanted to punch him so hard, like the entire time we were doing that. Like, and then I would just surf the web because I'm done. I'm writing as things are happening. I'm in the moment, in the flow. And so then, like, I'm surfing the web while he's writing things down. Then he checks his OkCupid thing, and I'm like, Chud's on. I'm waiting for you. Anyway, you guys have my roommate Richard meme. I don't need to go over this.
I have to say that, like, watching it with Terry was a little bit odd. Like, I was sitting there, and then Terry was we sat down to watch it. Terry started playing Diablo 3 while the movie was on, and every time I would like say something like, "Oh wow, that was cool," Terry would stop and look up, and then he would pay attention to the movie for like 2 minutes, and then he'd do it again.
Another bit of dialogue that I enjoyed was he talks about his gift and how he has to use it, and she says, "You ever think it's a curse?" And it's like, "No, it's a gift. I saved the box it came in." That's a good line.
That's a good line. Yeah, I like that.
And there's a lot of good lines in there. I mean, like if you actually, like you were saying, the whole Watchmen syndrome. Like if you read the books, there's a lot of good lines in there. And
I
in fact,
suspect I would enjoy the books.
the second one, the second, they left this open ended, and I really, really hope that they continue to do the Odd Thomas movies. Like it would be really awesome. And in fact, you guys don't know this, but at the end when they said they had a sign and it was a big frame picture and it said "In Odd We Trust."
Yeah, I saw that.
That's actually a reference to the graphic novel.
Wow.
There's a graphic novel, "In Odd We Trust." Yeah, like it's actually. Odd Thomas has transcended a lot of different things. He's gone to that. He's done they've done books. They've done movies, obviously, audio books. But I mean, it is overall just a really, really good series. And one of the things that I was really upset about, for those of you who are actually going to listen to this and are familiar with the series, was two things. I have two very serious complaints about this movie.
I want to ask you that.
As an Odd Thomas fan, huh?
I do want to ask you about that. Yeah.
Number one, when he wakes up and sees Elvis, the poster board.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Hey, Elvis." In the book, Elvis follows him around as a ghost who's not at rest, and he has to help Elvis find peace.
Yeah.
The second one was Ozzy Boone, Oswald Patton.
Yeah.
He has a much larger role in the novels than he does in
I suspected that.
Yeah.
than he does in the actual movie. The whole thing is that like the books are written down as from first person point of view by Odd Thomas, and Odd Thomas was inspired to do that by Ozzy Boone.
Yeah.
Ozzy is actually a huge author. Like he's like Pico Mundo's minor celebrity of the year.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things, and it's a very, very cool thing, and I wish they would have included both of those things, but I can understand how having friggin' Elvis walking in and out of scenes would have been distracting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and besides, I think Bruce Campbell's doing stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
If we can move for Bruce Campbell to be in, that would have been like make it some awesome thing. We got Willem Dafoe, Anton Yelchin, Alison Timlin, friggin' Bruce Campbell, and it's like, wow, like this is an all-star cast here.
It still is an all-star cast.
By the way, I don't know if you caught this, but Alison Timlin, Stormy, was actually the granddaughter of Walken and Stand Up Guys.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
Right. I did not catch that. Good to know.
I thought Stormy was interesting. I caught her. I caught in the movie that there was a reference to her real name, and I knew her last name was Llewellyn, which I thought was interesting. So I looked it up. Her first name was Ronan Llewellyn, which is a very cool Celtic Welsh name. I kind of am somewhat upset that she either A, didn't have abilities, or B, didn't somehow augment Odd's abilities, but her role is still pretty good.
Well, I mean, the whole thing for Stormy in the series to me is that she's the one who drives them, and even after the big reveal at the end where she's dead, she continues to be a recurring force in the series as Odd Thomas's drive. They'll do occasional thing where like he'll think about something she said or something they did. One of the things that it's just a thing, and I hate to keep rocking this because I'm the guy who actually read the book, and I'm sorry for hogging all the time, but it really, really, really is something you should pick up and read if you've got the time. It's worth it. The second book is my personal favorite, only because of the Russian. And when you read that, if you ever get to that point, you will completely understand.
Yeah, I think that movies should certainly exist on their own, even if they are adaptations of books. And I do feel as if hearing your words and having watched it without having read the book, I do feel as if this movie doesn't necessarily stand alone.
It doesn't. I mean, it does a good job of being its own movie, and like we said, it does a huge amount of information in the beginning. Like it crams it down your throat, like Matrix style, uploads it as quick as possible, and they do a good job of covering a lot of the important things. They cover the rules, they cover a couple of other things, but it's just you got a 600-page book or whatever. It's not that long, but you get a book like that, and you've got all this place to do exposition, and you don't have that in the movie.
Right.
Go
ahead.
I had nothing actually.
Speaking of the rules, and this is probably a critique you're going to hear me say on more than one occasion, but I wish they would have taken a little bit more from Chud and the reveal of the Bodax, or the reveal of of like not having the Botox have so much screen time. Maybe some indirect kind of references to their activities. I feel as if you could have gotten that increasing, like the increase in menace as the timeline went on, if you would have changed the settings somewhat. Like the settings still seem kind of poppy and bright, and I feel like if you wouldn't have wasted so much on CGI, you could have did that.
Well, I mean, the whole thing with the city, too, Pico Mundo, is if you notice, he was able to walk to Las Vegas, at the end. And they're relatively close. So it's going to have that poppy, like, desert atmosphere somewhere close by to Vegas. To me, it seemed like the city was good. But the Bodocs drive the whole plot. I mean, that's what initially draws him in. He follows them. They're a major function of the actual story itself. You couldn't do a slow reveal with them because it's like, well, I mean, it gives you an idea of how big of a threat this is. And to me, what they did was the most intelligent thing to do in that situation. Well, we can't slow reveal the monster, so let's just add exponentially monsters as things get closer and closer to the end to show you how big of a threat it is. And they even mention it,
I disagree. You could definitely slow reveal both the plot and the Bodocs. And I'm not necessarily saying that you don't have to reveal the Bodocs itself. What I am saying is that they don't have to have screen time every time they're active. At least, and so in that kind of indirect play, they still have a presence in your mind, but they don't necessarily suck out dollars from the movie's budget because you have to pay someone to do that CGI. And then you could in turn contribute to the scenes like ambiance by, regardless of where you are, having more kind of gritty, detailed, dark type of scenes. Like even think like Fungus Bob's house was a little bit too bright.
I don't know. I found everything. I never saw where there was a budget shortfall, and I felt that if it was bright, it was naturally bright because it's a small town and people are generally happy. And even when things were happening that were dark, the brightness of the city seemed natural. I mean, if someone's going to shoot up a fucking mall, like no one lowers the light levels, those things happen in the light of day. I think that's part of the unsettling reality of it. Because at the heart of this, the Bodocs are just foreshadowing. They just build atmosphere. The real horror of this is a bunch of assholes who want to blow up a mall and shoot people. Those are the real monsters that slowly get revealed.
Man is the real monster.
That's actually the whole series thing is, man is the real monster here, and we go and create and do these horrible things. I mean, that's what the major message is, and I think that it does a very good job of delivering that. And even at the end, when the Bodoc takes over the dude, it's still something the dude would do. It's not like he's talking like he's completely in control at times, and I'm like, I can completely see this guy doing that.
Yeah, it's like the prime Bodoc. They build him up in like scene 1. He is. He recurs. Like he's always the one. Because like they're all running out of the hellhole, right, or whatever. And then one of these guys is gonna be a little slower than the rest. And sure enough, it's like and because they do that. Like when there's a pack of enemies, there's always one that's a little bit smarter and bigger, and he's like your bad guy. And that's what he keeps running into. That's the one who's kind of like when he's behind the door. I really thought the Bodoc was gonna be like through it or something. You know what I mean? Because like they can phase through things. That's the cool thing. But whatever. Anyway, although the Bodoc story didn't really go anywhere, because they're just foreshadowing, right?
Yeah.
But then he's like, the Bodocs tricked me, and I'm like, so is it a big trap for the Bodocs to kill you because they know that you can see them? Why would the Bodocs trick you? Is suddenly this entire thing just a trap for fucking Chekov there? And then it goes away, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was suddenly not ominous.
Yeah.
It didn't go anywhere. Like it's like the Bodocs just pulled a little heist. I'm like, okay.
They tricked me.
I will say that that is something that is not in the books. Odd does not get found out by the Bodocs. I mean, they're pretty serious about that. If you get found out by the Bodocs, you're done. I mean, you just sign the check. Your life is over.
It's like getting found out by the agents in the Matrix, because they just like body hop until they fucking kill you. Like there's nothing. So
Yeah, I felt there was a lot of running around, and there wasn't much. I don't feel as if there was much development, or I guess I expected a bigger build. For whatever reason, I expected less of a slow build, more of a medium build, and it really wasn't. It was a very, very slow build towards the end. But I still feel like the characterization and the plot was somewhat shallow. Like um, even looking at like the casting, like actually it's not even really casting of how they dressed up the figures. They're almost too preppy. They're almost too like I don't know, white bread carbon copies. Like it felt plastic to me. Like it didn't feel believable. I guess
Fair enough.
because the minute they showed up on screen, the minute these two guys showed up on screen, like there's something up with these people. They're way too young and beautiful to be cops. Like there's something that's gonna happen.
Some of my porn files would disagree with me. But
And then,
kinda
I
like
don't know. I felt like there was there's a lot of quirkiness and not enough story development. But maybe that was intentional.
I don't know, like I think most of the development we got for those guys comes back around because like at one point you're like, if this guy's fucking dead, then someone else is behind it. So it's got to be a twist. So there's got to be someone we know. So it's this dick cop. And I didn't get how everything was put together, but I'm like, they're obviously the bad guys somehow.
Yeah.
I'm still like, guns? I don't like. How are they gonna shoot up this mall with guns? There's gotta be something bigger than guns. And like even in the middle, like whenever he has a pistol and the other guy has like an automatic weapon, I'm like,
Yeah.
the numbers aren't right for this, you dicks.
Speaking of the numbers, he said he had 4 rounds, but there was one in the chamber. I mean, come on.
I'm not
Yeah, but the thing too, that's one of the things that Odd is he doesn't do guns very well. He's pretty good, decent fighter, purely because of what he said. You know, he has to survive, but he doesn't do guns very often, and only when the situation is under extreme duress and he needs to do it, otherwise people will die.
Yeah.
So he you know, that's a common mistake somebody who is unfamiliar with guns would make.
To run while shooting a gun. Yeah.
Well, that too.
You know another thing that Odd is bad at? Being a neighbor. God, that guy's the biggest jerk. Like I'm gonna steal your car, Rosalie, and put a dead person in it. Don't worry, I'm not gonna tell you when I'm gonna bring it back.
He borrows your car all the time.
He does. He borrows a lot of people's cars in places.
Like, wow.
So, I kind of thought it was funny, and it makes it feel like he has an established relationship with a person that we never
I
see.
did like that. Like it almost seemed he had a relationship with the entire town that way.
He does. Like that's the thing. Is Odd as he's the oddball in the town. He's the clown. He's the town fool. Like everybody knows him, and that's one of the things that makes this character great. Is it's everybody knows the guy, but nobody really knows what's going on except for a very select few people. Yeah. Anyway, how's it going, Terry? By the way.
Oh, hey, welcome, Terry.
It's going all right. Just got stuck at dinner for a little longer than expected.
Sorry.
It's okay. It was Olive Garden.
Oh, that's
We're family there, so which means it was just awful.
So, what are your thoughts on the movie, Terry?
The movie.
Thomas.
Did somebody watch it?
I feel I've seen better.
Okay.
It wasn't bad. It didn't really hit. I'm very neutral on this one.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think it sounds like, if I'm reading this correctly, your thoughts on the movie closely mirror my own, and are departed from both Chris and Josh's. Not closely mirror, but are similar.
Yeah, I think it was all right. I'm glad I watched it. I'm partially intrigued. I understand it's based off of novels.
Big tirade earlier about me, for me on that. Yeah, we can talk about that after the thing.
I like the word botox.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun word.
It's actually a real word from Ireland.
Yeah, and
which doesn't surprise me given Stormy's last name, or her full name rather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of real things, there is a moral here, and I feel the moral. It's a mini moral, and it's in the very beginning where they first introduce the Bodox in the diner scene, and that moral is you never double up on a wink. Stormy like winks at him, and then like he does like some narrative, and she winks again. I'm like, what are you doing? You validated the first wink. This is a rookie mistake.
I swear to God, I thought you said wank.
In the diner, Chris.
Listen,
I was confused.
two
Odd.
wanks don't make a right.
It's not that odd. You never double from a wink.
I didn't catch that.
I don't know. It does sound pretty odd to me.
And the other thing was, in the bowling scene, I could have swore that when she's up there looking around, her winking eye, which was the same eye that she double winked, like twitched. Like it didn't wink. Like she was about to do it and thought better of it. And if you don't believe me, watch that scene again. It's a very distinct scene. She's about to throw the ball down the aisle. She looks around, and then like her eye twitches right before she like goes into her bowling movements.
I didn't catch that.
Mental note: next character I play is gonna be unable to wink properly.
It's hard. It only works if we're all there, right there, or you have a video camera.
Yeah. Well, I do have a video camera. It's not plugged in. Doesn't mean I don't
if you
have
would
one.
use the video camera, how about
And
that?
I would. I would, and you'd see me, and I'd blink both eyes.
The both eyes blink is pretty adorable.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying, right? Blink.
Yeah. So, I admit I teared up at the end.
Oh yeah.
Big cry scene.
Now, to say to something that they did do well, doubling up on, is whammies at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very pleased with the Sixth Sense style. With the Sixth Sense style of I didn't know that she was dead type of reveal, and him like walking to Vegas, which they foreshadow earlier in the movie, which was like, this is good. Like this is you. They had a romance, and it just developed. It did or did not develop during the movie, and this makes a total logical sense, and I love how you went that far with it.
I think it was strong from the start. Like they put enough background into it that I accepted it, and that's pretty rare.
But did it progress? Is my I guess what I'm alluding to, or did it just stay constant there?
Well, they were threatened to be together till death did them part. I think
Yeah,
they
I guess.
completed it. Yes.
It's actually you will be destined to be together forever, and that's one of the things they kind of cover a little bit at the very end. Stormy actually didn't believe that when you died you went to heaven. The whole thing was that she believed that and he even references us at the end where he says, Stormy believed that the first part of life was boot camp. You go through boot camp to get trained to go into service, and then once you go to service, you go to heaven afterwards. And that's the whole thing. Odd, like he claws onto for the rest of the series of books, is that at the end of service, when he's finished, they will finally be together forever in
Interesting.
heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, because like my impression of the Vegas thing is that he's like, I'm gonna live a long ass time.
Yeah.
Go to Vegas, I'm just gonna fight shit 24/7. So
Yeah.
sure, 60 years. Like
Yeah,
he's
actually, he doesn't stay there. Like the next book does take place in Vegas, but after Vegas, he actually leaves. So it's again worth reading.
I'm sure he did it purely so that he could tell people, so why'd you leave Vegas? No, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you always say that? I just want to know where you used to live in Vegas. No, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah. But no,
What about?
Hmm?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna go off the Vegas thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no. Like after the shooting and everything, like everybody gets up and they have a long reveal as to whether or not Stormy there survived. I'm like, man, we have established that he cannot tell dead people from living people. He has the opposite of the sixth sense thing going on here. So I just kept waiting for her to talk, and they do like the silent epilogue thing, and I'm like, we're at point 8. Point 8 in the units for that is that episode of Scrubs where Brendan Fraser dies.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. That's
I
what it
don't
is. It's the same thing.
if you caught this, but if you pay attention during the actual scenes where they're together, there's a part where they're talking about how they drank too much wine, There were two glasses, and one was completely empty and one was completely full.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was in there telling you what was coming, but it was unless you were looking for it and you knew what to look for. Like, yeah.
When they eat breakfast, his bowl is full. Her bowl is completely empty.
Yeah.
It's because I was fortunate enough that I caught that. I didn't think that her ice cream stains would become blood stains. That was a nice touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to watch everything, and I'm like, oh, it's really bad. The worst part is that Willem Dafoe has to play the part of JD in this. Where do you think you are right now? I thought he was older than that, Willem Dafoe. I thought he looked a little older. Yeah, I might be thinking Dennis Leary, because Dennis Leary's visibly aging a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think Willem probably takes better care of himself than Leary does.
Who knows? Well, one of them's a comedian, so yeah, probably. So, but no, like how hard did it have to be in that last scene? You're like Willem Dafoe and then two other actors, and Anton Yeltsin or something is like in the foreground crying, and you're like, everybody, do empathy, and everyone's just huddled together. Where's the sad voice, General? Where's the sad? For a while, I couldn't imagine the shooting there where like. It looks like they just got cold after a while. They couldn't put a jacket on. Just like, so sad.
When I saw that scene, all I could think of is that episode of Family Guy where Joe loses a criminal. He gets away, and they're just in the bar crying, and all of them just kind of slip away. You know, Quagmire slides off the booth and rolls on the floor, and
classic.
And I forget what I think Peter climbs out the window.
Yeah.
That's what that scene made me think of.
Yeah. Again, I was tearing up, but yeah, it did. Yeah, it's very good. So, also made me think of that Doctor Who episode where he kisses the hologram of River Song or whatever the fuck that bullshit was. And of course, unlike that episode, these guys didn't fucking talk about it afterwards. But yeah, no, it was great. Great, good times. So. Yeah, I don't know. I felt really excited for the action scenes, and I felt really invested for the emotional scenes. Felt really intrigued by the mystery. I don't know. I was like super engaged with this movie.
Interesting.
That's a rarity right there. So I take this as a victory, but
a personal victory, is that right?
Yeah.
Did you?
So everybody's like, "Oh, you can't go backseat. You gotta have integrity." I'm like, "Yeah, white."
So this was yours then, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, like I said, I recommended it purely because I knew what it was and wanted to talk about having seen it. And, I'm glad with it. As a fan, somebody who's read some of the books multiple times, completely okay with how this movie went.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when you adapt a book to film, there is no higher praise.
Yeah.
Well, money's pretty high praise, but yeah. Aside from that,
higher.
I actually got a fairly bad review on Rotten Tomatoes, if I remember correctly, too.
Well, people are awful shitters. So yeah, I'm surprised we heard Derek compared to so many movies because it reminded me of Screamers with Michael J. Fox.
Screamers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Michael J. Fox is the guy who can see ghosts, and he has to get rid of ghosts in a small town.
I thought that was Frighteners.
Frighteners. My bad.
Yes.
Screamers was the one on like Mars or some shit. The guys in the dirt.
Yeah. I was about to say that was a different movie you're thinking of.
I fucking always get those two mixed up, and I may have even gotten the description for The Hangout wrong. Oh.
Yep.
So.
Well, I've never seen either of them, so.
They're both okay.
Frighteners is pretty dang awesome. Just surely because Gunny shows up. It's a good movie overall. Gunny from Metal Gear Solid, not Metal Gear Solid, Full Metal Jacket.
Arlie Emery.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Arlie Emery, yeah.
So, yeah, it was good. Again, I think I kind of saw the bomb coming. I wasn't quite confident enough in the movie to do that, but I was happy that it did. How I think it's worked. It keeps digging deeper in a good way. It's good. Characters were good. They set up all the reveals, I think, pretty well. They do the creepy stuff creepily.
That was another thing I thought too. Was when they slowed down the pace. In fact, that was one of the notes that I had typed up before I closed it out because I really didn't think I was going to need them. Was that you notice like one of the parts that we had talked about pacing when they slowed down. A lot of times they were slowing down to do the creepy reveal stuff.
Yeah.
That was a really good thing because it did help build tension. And then you're back to this pace where it's like, oh, he's got to run through the mall shooting this guy, then he's got to run back the other way.
Yeah.
Following chick who got killed earlier by Rottweilers.
Well set up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm hearing you guys describe this, and I'm wondering if I'm somewhat desensitized to action. And this is entirely possible because I consumed a lot of karate movies when I was younger. Because I never really I found the action sequences pleasant. I didn't find them tense. Like I don't really think that there was any. I'm trying to think of barring the end, if there was any tense part of this movie. I felt, and I'm struggling to come up with one.
I mean, if the Bodoc and the door didn't do it for you, man, I don't know. Like, maybe you did get an inoculation at a young age.
Yeah.
Like, they got the freaking scary-ass monster looking at him across from the door, and I'm like...
I did like that. I did like this whole... I criticized the Bodoc being everywhere, but the one thing that they did well was they utilized it. Like, they could have just as he said, yes, Bodocs, blah, 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 and never had that rule about, if the Bodocs fucking know you're looking at them, fuck you, you're about to die. And so having that rule was kind of like an excuse to build tension, and perhaps it did for normal people.
Oh, and when he's in the diner, he's cutting up the cucumbers. I'm waiting for him to cut himself while not paying attention to the Bodocs.
Okay, so this is another thing that I noticed, and this is kind of a more of a general thing that I was curious about, and I'm glad you brought that up, because he's cutting it, and the cucumbers are flying in an arc, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of what I've termed Scott Pilgrim-y scenes here, and I feel as if it was a nod to maybe like a pulp type of fiction. It felt almost pulpy, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
A little stylized, maybe, like a little heightened reality.
Yeah, it was a heightened reality, and I felt like I wanted a little bit more of that, but not in the direction they went. I don't know if I can explain it well. I just felt as if I was expecting more darker pulpy, and I got like poppy pulpy, which felt weird.
Yeah, I felt the contrast worked because it made it, because life isn't your grimmest experiences, and it doesn't cast everything else. It does cast a shadow on everything else, but like you still have happy moments, and you still go to fucking fairs, and there's still like the Technicolor parts of your life, and they exist with the really grim, dark stuff. And that's what makes it so weird, is that the tone of any moment can change, and whenever it does, like you never forget those sorts of shifts.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things. He's out there. They did a really good job with that, and they have the whole moment where at the beginning he's talking to the girls, and they're talking about restaurant.
I like that. That was a very good moment where he's doing a flapjack stuff.
That's actually one of the things that he is a minor celebrity in Pico Mundo too because of his flapjacks. They're supposed to be the fluffiest pancakes for miles around. That's his claim to fame. Like Odd is supposed to be a wonderful fry cook who fights crime on the side. But they did that in there where they were you're showing him doing the hibachi style freaking paddles, griddles or spatulas, and then doing other stuff, and then all of a sudden there's Bodocs, and he's got to continue to keep up that ridiculous thing, and it does a very good tone shift where it's you stop seeing him being so happy doing his job, and you start seeing him being utterly terrified of what's in the room.
Yeah.
Huh. I mean, I liked him, like what you mentioned there, and okay, two things. You mentioned that he they did the hyper reality, which yes, I definitely not disagreeing with. It was there. I just felt as if its execution was somewhat odd to me. And then the other part. Oh fuck! I lost it. I hate when that happens. Anyway, something completely different that was going to go on after this point was, I think another part of it was the Bodocs being somewhat translucent. So you get that there's they're crawling, and usually when there's a lot of them on the screen, they're less translucent. But when there's like the scene I'm thinking about in particular is when like Fungus Bob walks out of the diner and he's like walking across. That's what I want to talk about. When he's walking across the park and he's like, it looks like he's batting away Bodox, but obviously he's not. But he kind of is. But I guess because it's so sunny and everything's so bright and they're kind of translucent, that scene doesn't hit as much as I feel like it should have. Like, should have been this weird dark miasma that I just didn't get. Like, I didn't feel it. And there were not a lot, but there were parts in this movie that I felt like, well, I feel like you're going for this like subtle menace, and I'm not feeling menaced.
Fair enough.
But the second part you said, Josh, was him almost injecting the tension because he's the one that sees Bodox. There are some scenes where he does it really well, and the diner is one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was happy with how menacing the Bodox were, like from that scene. So when they show up later, like I kind of accept their menace, especially when the big one occasionally shows up and he fucks things up. He threatens to fuck things up. You kind of get that he's ahead of the curve a little bit compared to the rest of the Bodox, the prime Bodox.
So was the big Bodoc ever was he shown before the end, like before the end of the mall? Because I didn't notice at all.
Yeah. You want to do it, Josh?
No, good. I've been talking quite a bit, so go ahead.
Like, when they pour out of the hellmouth, right?
Uh-huh.
One of them moves a little slower. He's like prowling around, and then he goes up and he almost finds what's his name, and then he leaves. I think he's also the one who was looking at him in the diner, who was like getting really close to him, the first one to come in. And then, I want to say there was like another moment where he pops up. Obviously, he's the one on the escalator. He's the one on the hood of the car. Because like he falls off the hood of the car, and like he falls off, and I'm like, he's gonna come back up on the screen. And he goes, rah! He comes back on the screen. I'm like, yeah, he knows what's up.
Yeah, I recognized that was a Bodoc, but I never recognized him being like a more different Bodoc. So that's interesting.
My focus is always on him because there's always one Bodoc that kind of stands out, and I guess like I never
got that.
They all kind of look the same, so it's hard to make one that really stands out. Occasionally, he'll be like a little taller than the rest, but it's basically. In every group of Bodocs, one Bodoc seems to act differently and smarter and more menacing. And I just accepted that was the prime Bodoc because that's something that happens narratively. So it's kind of meta-knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it does look different. I'm sure that they visually designed it to be distinct from the rest of them, but that's not the kind of information I can process personally. So I knew it simply because of convention. So whenever
I didn't grab the convention or the different... the difference in design. Their design was kind of, I don't know. It was
amorphous.
It was I don't know if it's like confusing. It was visually confusing. It's like watching the Transformers. There's so many little moving parts that when there's an action scene, I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at right now. Like there's just a lot of moving parts, and I don't get what just happened.
Yeah.
If there's a second one, Derek, I will say this much without dropping any spoilers. I'm not a fan of doing that. If there's a second one.
Second one, okay.
If there's a second one, do not watch it. Because the second one, if you think the Bodocs are bad, the next one's even worse.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
No, I feel like I have to watch it just because I like the Bodocs gravitate towards chaotic death. I gravitate towards like main character angst. Like you have a main character that has a whole bunch of angst, I'm just like beat a honey baby, and so like him like just losing the love of his life or surrounded by enemies, like that'd be my jam.
I can see that. Yeah, but the cell phone bits. How good were the cell phone bits?
Cell phone bits.
Like they're two perfect jump scares.
Yeah.
Like they bring the tension up, the tension goes down, and then cell phone. You're like, whoa, cell phone.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I believe the exact quote. I'm not positive what the exact quote was. I think I've done my personal best in the scare jump Olympics.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, like the jump and gasp or.
Yeah, jump and gasp. That was it. That was pretty good.
So initially I thought fucking Fungus Bob or whatever. I thought they were doing an X-Men thing where like, hey, you think Magneto's going after Wolverine, but it turns out he's after Rogue. I thought they were doing that, but for the girl, they're like, he's after me, and I'm like, well, actually, you guys were both in the diner, he went into Stormy's place of work to buy ice cream for reasons that have never been explained.
Yeah.
And then he
Well, he
came to
needed
see
the
both
containers
of
for
you at the church.
skulls, apparently.
They're due for use recycle, I guess. So,
Going green, man. Going green.
so I kind of thought they were going to do that. I was a little disappointed that they didn't. But
Another thing that I thought was weird, that I felt like was foreshadowing and then wasn't, was when Fungus Bob dies. He's got like this very odd yellow-orange shit coming out of his holes.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so like maybe you're like some sort of zombie, or maybe you're like some kind of weird thing. And then there's just nothing. It's just no. That's how dead people are. I'm like, no.
They
I don't
are,
really.
no.
I don't know how this whole orange stuff. I even like went so far as like maybe it's like the people shooting them in the heart. The bullets are made out of some weird acid thing. But I had nothing, and then they're like, nope, that's just dead people. Like, okay,
Thing.
weird.
Maybe the cockroach had a condition. I don't know. I do not know.
Spin-off of Odd Thomas, Cockroach Doctor.
You're right, because I wasn't sure if he's a zombie, because like when they do the refrigerator review, which is classic, I kind of thought, oh look, he's back up, but I'm like, oh no, he's a dead person. He's haunting stuff. So I kind of thought that he was like a zombie, and that was the whole thing. But no, it's.
I did like I don't know if I'd say the role reversal, but the kind of rope-a-dope with the poltergeist in him, where he's like, Bob, you can't hurt me, man. And he's like, oh, but you can do that.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
When they went with the classic explosion, but I love how they dropped the fridge.
Yeah, the fridge was.
The fridge came out of nowhere.
And he totally did the whole cool people don't look at explosions. Cool people also don't look at fridges. He just drove by.
Yeah, that didn't kill him. So.
Well, that's the thing, again, Odd has faced, even in the novels, like they talk about a lot of the stuff that he's had to deal with when he was younger. Like, if you could imagine somebody who was perpetually seen, like the guy who has seen too much shit, that's Odd Thomas. Like, he has perpetually done things, experienced things, been places, and, gone to the extremes that nobody else has. And he's very nonchalant about it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of stuff and things. I would recommend it.
I was kind of surprised he didn't just. I thought when he's like at the Bodox, like tricked me or whatever, I'm like, oh, it was like a trap. I thought he was gonna like pull the fire alarm to get everybody out, and that was gonna like lock the building down or trigger a bomb or something.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that didn't come full circle, because if you gotta evacuate a mall.
Well, that was one of the things
fire
that
alarms.
I noticed. But at the like when he goes into the mall scene, they actually lock down the building.
Well, they do. They do once the shooting starts. Like people start trampling towards the exits, and then they lock it down.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they ever explain if you even thought like fire alarms in the book, or if I'm just being pedantic or what.
Yeah.
Would the fire alarm have automatically unlocked all the doors? Is what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying
Good.
is that if you have a mall full of thousands of people who you're pretty sure because of your local Bodog density are going to die, then you need to evacuate that mall as quickly as possible. So you pull a fire alarm, or you start a motherfucking fire.
Start motherfucking fires.
More convincing. So and the lady's like, look, there are flashing lights and there are cheering crowds. I'm like, well, and there's a fountain, and I'm like, well, that's like it's all misdirection, right?
Yeah.
Like the cheering crowds are screaming crowds. The fountain is water from the sprinkler system, and the flashing lights are the lights that come on when we pull a fire alarm. So, like, I kind of built some expectations there. So I'm not angry it didn't meet my arbitrary expectations. I kind of thought they were going to do that whole twist on us with the technically different prophecy. But there's an episode of Deep Space Nine about that. Anyway.
And drink.
They didn't do that. Anyway, I was being pedantic. So anyway, we had 6 minutes left.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
All right. So my final thoughts are basically what I think this movie needs. I think this movie has solid dialogue writing. It needs better plot writing and less quirkiness. It needs a better twist at the end than 4 dudes make a murder pact because they're in a wannabe cult. It's like, oh, you thought there were 3 dudes, but there were really 4. I gotcha. And I feel like the scenes were underutilized in the mood of two quirky 20-somethings playing in Hell's Gate. Basically, less CGI and more dark colors with subtle menace.
I felt the opposite of Derek.
Way to phone it in, Chris.
Like, I could just say everything you said, but back. But, like, I'm just going to save everybody a little bit of time here. I like the tone. I like the shifts. I thought that the dialogue was way weaker than the actual story. I found
at least give me the twist of like there are 4 dudes and we were led to believe there are 3. I mean, that is kind of a half-ass kind of twist, isn't it?
It's the Hangman's paradox, right?
I'm not familiar
let me
with
explain this briefly. Where it's like the Wild West. A judge sentences a guy to hanging, but they're going to surprise him. That's a part of the sentence. So he's going to be hung within a week. And every day at noon, someone's going to come with either a meal or to take him away for the hanging. He'll never know which one. So, he's sentenced on a Friday, so he has Monday to Friday. So, right, we get the deal here.
Mm-hmm.
Basic logic setup. So the guy knows that he can't be hung on a Friday, because if it rolls around to the next Friday, then he knows that when the guy comes at noon, he's not going to have lunch. It's going to be for the hanging, because that's the last possible day he can be hung. So he's not going to get hung on a Friday because of that. Make sense?
Well, yeah, but I don't see how this ties in.
So, that means that if Thursday's the last day he can get hung, so you repeat the logic setup again. He can't be hung on Thursday, because then, knowing he can't be hung on Friday, when the guy comes at noon, well, I can't do Thursday. So eventually that train of logic applies to each and every day, so you can't hang him, but he's still surprised when the hangman comes.
Okay.
It's just like that. It's like, well, okay, there's a guy, we found the guy who was really in on the conspiracy. Like, oh, there was another guy that was in on the conspiracy, which completely tracks with everything we know. Interesting. And you're like, oh, actually, we iterate this again, and everything we have supports another person being in on this. And you're like, oh, shit, more people make sense. And then you go, like, this must be all 3 of them, right? This is all the guys you know. These are all of our players. And they go, oh, wait, there's one more player you wrote off. You're like, oh, it gets bigger. So it's like you wouldn't expect it, and it surprised me because you wouldn't expect it to keep going.
I don't know, like, I felt like you... Well, okay, I mean, like, I
hope
thought
Josh
Gibson Shadow was the...
concise final thoughts together.
No, I'm good. I mean, my concise final thoughts pretty much are: it's a good movie. I think they did a really good job of translating the book Odd Thomas into a quote-unquote superhero-esque movie. It was high-quality acting, I think, on all parts, except for maybe the 2 chicks at the end when their crying wasn't so much real, but Alison Timlin and friggin' Anton Yelchin pull that scene together like nobody's business. I would like to see a second one, and I really, really hope that this movie did well enough that they will produce it.
Hopefully.
So, before I start my final thoughts, quick question. Was this in theaters?
Don't know.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't straight to... why did I ever close it? See, I really just believe it.
Someone research while Terry finishes his final thoughts.
Yeah, I got this.
So, okay. So my thoughts are, I would like to see a second one.
Maybe open.
Yeah.
That's all your thoughts, Terry?
Terry never has a lot of thoughts. I mean, if you look at all of these...
Yeah, I mean, he tends not to think too much.
Actually, I just give my final thought. I don't write a whole new essay.
Oh, look at this guy. This guy's a little upset now. He's got to come back with something.
Derek started it. That's what mine read. And I'd like to add to it that the entire time, I knew the numbers didn't match up for a mass shooting, so I was waiting for more shit to explain why there were so many people. So I always accepted the boom at the end getting bigger, until literally the camera. Anyway.
It says the budget was $27 million, but it doesn't say how well it did at the box office.
That's unusual.
It may not have been in the box office. It may have been straight to DVD. But I mean, even if it was straight to DVD, this thing should have gone to theaters. IMDb gives it a friggin' 8.0, if I remember correctly.
Received negative reviews from Magazine. Metacritic reviews. I kind of feel like it did go to film. They just
Alright.
maybe didn't go everywhere.
Maybe like a limited release. Okay.
Yeah, something
Well,
like that.
on that bombshell, we're going to wish you all good night.
Thank you.